Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Ray Alvarez, also known as Nerd Numbers, and with me, as always, is my co-host, producer, voice of God, and man of many hats, Brian Foster. Say, hey, Brian.
Yeah, what's going on, Dre? We're here on July 2nd, and there's been a lot of free agency stuff going on, and it's hit pretty big. It's hit pretty big.
I like that. You dated the show. That's actually something we should do.
Yeah.
Say we recorded that. I like it. All right, so just giving a brief rundown, we're pretty much going to talk NBA offseason. We are recording this right after LeBron James announced he is going to Los Angeles. We're going to go over a Donovan Mitchell escapade that happened this week, and then maybe give some props to Daryl Morey. Let's just hop right in. So I'm gonna wait for dessert for a little bit, Brian, and we're gonna talk Donovan Mitchell. I believe I titled this segment "Donovan Mitchell the Hell." So here's what happened. Dave and I have been kicking around this post for a while. I've mentioned on this show to you, Brian, that I've had lots of Donovan Mitchell posts that I've kind of started writing and then kind of stopped. Like, who cares? Because the basic story about Donovan Mitchell is this: Donovan Mitchell is probably close to about average for what we'd say as in terms of rookie performance this last season. He was close to an average, maybe a little below average for a rookie. So he's a below average NBA player, but that's not a big deal. Most rookies are. And in fact, some of the greatest players in the NBA, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, I'm trying to think if there are others. Some of the other big names I think were above, like Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, Steph Curry. They were actually above average as rookies. But, I think Kobe Bryant, for instance, Dirk Nowitzki. I'm trying to name like MVPs off the top of my head. So I might look some of those up and just give a point in a second. But, it's not abnormal, especially now that there are a lot of players that are one-and-done players, to be a below-average player as a rookie. So with that said, it's not a problem for you to be excited about what Donovan Mitchell will become, but our point has been, if you liked the Jazz this last season, the belief that it was Donovan Mitchell's contribution is misguided. And I'm going to run down I'm kind of maybe getting some thoughts of an article that I may or may not write out, Brian. So if I don't write it, at least it's on air somewhere. One argument I've heard is what Donovan Mitchell did was impressive. Essentially, it was impressive that Donovan Mitchell was able to put up the numbers he has for a rookie, taking as many shots as he has as a rookie, blah, blah, blah. That may be true. I brought up this episode of a Comic Book Man, which is a Pawn Stars knockoff before, where Walt Flanagan, the head Pawn Star guy essentially in the show, makes the observation that there is this rare toy somebody brings in that he might be able to go all up and down the East Coast and never find another one of. But if he goes all up and down the East Coast, he might not be able to find a single person that actually wants this toy, because that's the whole premise of the show is these, rare comics, rare toy collectibles that are worth a lot of money. He's saying, you have brought in a very rare toy, but that rare toy might not be valuable. And we bring up the same argument in sports a lot. Impressive does not always equal valuable. Is it impressive that Kobe Bryant in his prime was able to take contested mid-range shots and connect at like 35%, while most NBA players would probably have only connected at 20%? Absolutely. Was it valuable? No. Donovan Mitchell taking that many shots as a rookie, was it impressive? Absolutely. Was it why the Utah Jazz won? Of course not. And the two major players, three actually we can look at for Utah last season, Rudy Gobert, just dropped his name, Rubio. I almost always say Marco Rubio. It's so funny. With all politics, every time I see Rubio in the headlines, I'm just like, he did what? Because I'm thinking that they're talking about Ricky Rubio, not Marco Rubio, and Joe Ingles. Those three players are really the driving force. And the real reason the Utah Jazz were good last season, we thought they were a great team, by the way. It was not an upset that they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. On paper, they were a better squad. Win-losses don't always correlate with point margin, which is what drives wins in the NBA. They were good because of defense, and they have one of the best goalies, if you want to use that metaphor, in the NBA, and Rudy Gobert. So it's very odd for us to see the credit going to Donovan Mitchell, where we're saying it might be impressive. It doesn't mean it was valuable. And in terms of what won games for the Thunder, Brian, Utah Jazz last season, it wasn't really Donovan Mitchell. I've also heard this argument I want to bring up, Brian, and that basically the Utah Jazz were a defensive-minded squad, and that was their plan, so we shouldn't be mad at Donovan Mitchell because he was playing in a bad scheme, essentially. Maybe, but I mean, it's an odd observation to say how dare you insult this team's bad offensive scheme? And they were a below average offensive scheme. For all of the vitriol that Ben Simmons on Philadelphia got for not taking threes, the Philadelphia 76ers had a better offense than the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are a close to average offense. They're really, really good at defense. So to say they intentionally had a bad strategy, I can't really fault you for that logic, but I can't really give you any credit for it. The last point we just want to make is we are not saying that Donovan Mitchell will not become a productive NBA player. And in fact, we're not even saying he wasn't a Rookie of the Year candidate, because we've seen lots of players. I just mentioned LeBron James and Kevin Durant. In my opinion, they won Rookie of the Year for what I would ostensibly call the most likely to succeed award. They weren't a above average NBA player. And by the way, this isn't surprising. The Oklahoma City Thunder, Kevin Durant's rookie season, were so bad they got into the draft lottery again. LeBron James didn't make the playoffs as a rookie. So, to say these players weren't the players they are now is nothing new, because don't forget that LeBron James managed to carry a horrible team on his back to the NBA Finals this season. We are not saying Donovan Mitchell will not become a good player. We're just saying he wasn't last season. And the last observation I'll note, and I actually did tweet this to Donovan Mitchell, is I do not have a fault with what Donovan Mitchell is doing if his goal is to get paid. We often have a very big disconnect in analytics from the players because the incentives players have do not line up with the fans. A case in point that I brought up this last season is Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony's time in Oklahoma City might be done. And what I heard lots of people start saying towards the end of the season is, why doesn't Carmelo Anthony take a reduced role off the bench a la Dwayne Wade? Because that would help the Oklahoma City Thunder and help him in the twilight of his career. And my response is, dude, if Carmelo Anthony's goal is to keep getting paid, going to the bench is just a death sentence. And in fact, don't miss the fact that Dwayne Wade ended up taking a pay cut to stay with Miami. He did get a big payday off of Chicago, but then when he decided to be more of a role player, took a pay cut to go play with Miami again. If your incentive is to get paid, which I do not fault most NBA players for. In fact, when I find out that players such as Kevin Durant, Brian, are being nice and leaving money on the table to help their squad out, I'm like, you are giving money to billionaires and you only have like a 6 to 20 year window to make that money. So in terms of Donovan Mitchell, what I do want clear, and I do think I'll actually have to put in a post at some point, Brian, just so it's out there, is if he's trying to maximize his pay, I have no fault with what he's doing. We're coming from a different angle to say, if you are a fan of the Utah Jazz winning, crediting Donovan Mitchell's performance this last season is a mistake. And then kind of the last point I'll bring up, hopefully those dogs aren't too loud, Brian, they are mine, is the whole Rookie of the Year argument. People kept saying in my comments to me, because I retweeted Dave Barry's post about this. Hopefully that's not coming up too bad. Hey, Brian, I'm going to mute and let you talk and just shut the door so it's a little quieter. So you talk about Donovan Mitchell. I'm not even going to be able to hear it, so you can even bash me if you want.
Oh, no, I won't bash you, Dre. Yeah, the dogs sound okay. But, yeah, so all those points are good on Mitchell. Here's the one thing, though, that and Dre just got his sound back now. So here's why I think it's so frustrating for us is because, we're that comic book guy saying, oh, this rare comic book shouldn't be worth a lot. But then everyone else and their mother is just falling over each other to tell us how great it is, and we don't agree. And that's what's funny to me, and that's why I always get a big chuckle when you generate all this cheap heat on Twitter, getting all these guys mad. Like, I think it's great. I love it.
All right, I'm responding to Brian's comment there about comic books. We had some technical difficulties, but I think you'll actually appreciate them, Brian. I think the internet actually broke, which is what happened, and we'll explain why in a second. We're talking Donovan Mitchell, and basically Brian just made the observation that we're kind of like the annoying comic guy explaining why an old comic book that's worth a lot of money we don't think is that good. And I think that is an amazing observation, Brian, because essentially that's the point. If you look at old comic books, the thing that make them valuable in terms of what people will pay money for has very little to do with the content. You can look at old Golden Age comics and they might have bad art or crappy stories, etc., but they're worth a ton of money because they were one of 100 printed and they're the first appearance of this random character that no one cares about for another 20 years. So that's a great point. And in terms of Donovan Mitchell, that is exactly it. The things that make him valuable are things that NBA teams will pay for, things that voters will vote for, but we're in the business of what wins games, and that's just our observation. And what I do just find amusing a lot about people that come up with, you've got to grade him as a rookie, it's just frustrating because, one, that's not how the NBA works. If the NBA were to go pick up a Kentucky team and play them in Brooklyn this next season, they would get smashed for what it's worth. That argument of, would the top NCAA team beat the Brooklyn Nets? No, they'd get squashed. They're not going to get bonus points because they're playing all young players. And in fact, we've seen that. Young players like Kevin Durant, like LeBron James, took a couple of years before they developed. Being a rookie is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. And then the last kind of point on that is that when we examine other rookies like Ben Simmons and Jason Tatum, they are just significantly better than Donovan Mitchell. So all we were saying is this last season, Donovan Mitchell was not a productive player.
Got a little Skype delay here.
Compared
Okay.
to other rookies, and for
all right, we're back. Keep going.
Dear God, Brian, it's just one of those days. So anyway, and then I wanted to show to explain. I can't recall if we recapped this all or if it was before the technical difficulties, Brian. What ended up happening is Dave Barry wrote an article at Forbes detailing this. Donovan Mitchell is a below-average shooting guard. For what it's worth, we've said the shooting guard position is the worst position in the NBA. You really take an amazing player like Michael Jordan or Dwayne Wade or, yes, even Kobe Bryant to make that position worth it. Most teams aren't. So if you are a below-average shooting guard, baseball terms, that's like calling you a below-average eighth batter. That's not a good thing. So Dave Barry wrote this piece at Forbes saying that Donovan Mitchell is a below-average shooting guard. I retweeted it. Donovan Mitchell quote tweeted me to say fools to myself and Dave Barry. And then Andrew Bailey, who, I enjoy following him, but I'll call him a faux analytics person. He's not going to watch the show, Brian, so we're just going to throw shade out here. I'm going to be whatever the god of shade is from Greek mythology, throwing shade. Andrew Bailey goes to Basketball Reference and just basically reads off a spreadsheet. That's essentially what Basketball Reference is. We love it. We use it. It's an online spreadsheet. And I know most people use it without understanding what the underlying numbers are. For instance, with Andrew Bailey, he'll routinely quote BPM and VORP. That's the same number. VORP is just a linear subtraction of BPM. And then, of course, when you start throwing out per and win shares, all of these numbers share the same ingredient, as does the wins produced formula. So essentially what you're saying is, what do the box score mean if you do that? So I do find lots of people that are basically saying, how dare you say this about Donovan Mitchell, to your comic book win point, Brian. They essentially are reading numbers they don't understand to explain why they're bad. And I hate to break this down for you people. It's yay points. And even BPM is a statistic. BPM and win shares are both handcrafted numbers that give credit for taking shots. And we've made this observation. Taking shots on its own is not valuable. There's a shot clock in the NBA. Any team, go look at Basketball Reference. There were horrible teams that managed to take up the same number of shots as Utah Jazz this season at a better rate. There's nothing intrinsically valuable about taking shots, and that's all we were saying about Donovan Mitchell, but it is interesting. And what I will say is kind of amusing is this is now the second time Donovan Mitchell has commented on me. I've got 5,000 followers. I'm nothing. I'm not big time. I was getting a little amused. Arturo back in the day was saying, like, I was the driver behind the Donovan Mitchell hate out there, and I that's cool, I guess, that I have that much power. I wish I knew that, Brian. It is just very amusing to see kind of the how hard athletes will feel about just random people tweeting about them. We noticed that Carmelo Anthony said "fuck out of here" to someone that tweeted Kyle Korver was a better player than him. It's amazing that this actually the modern era is a fascinating place, Brian. And then I had the other side of it, which is I had a bunch of strangers on the internet yelling at me, and that's an odd bit of psyche. And I don't really have a cohesive point there. But just to note, that was a very odd thing to happen this week. And then basically I'm just explaining our thoughts on Donovan Mitchell for the millionth time. I forget if I said it this go round because, like I mentioned, we had some technical difficulties and lost some recording. But we are fully behind Donovan Mitchell for what he's doing. His goal is to get paid. There is a very extreme disconnect in the NBA between decision makers in terms of what they will pay for and the voters in terms of what they will vote for and what wins games, despite the fact that we know for what fans want to pay for, what fans will pay for a winning franchise, despite the fact that Giannis is probably, I'm going to be mean, Brian, Giannis is probably a more impressive player the last 2 seasons at least than Steph Curry. Steph Curry's jersey sells better in Milwaukee than Giannis's, I guarantee you. So despite the fact that that's what fans want, there's a very real disconnect. And we have no fault with Donovan Mitchell wanting to game that disconnect. And we have no fault with him kind of yelling at people like me because that hurts his bottom line, that hurts his brand. We notice selfless players like Kevin Durant that leave money on the table for things. We're like, no, don't do that. Maximize your earning potential. So Donovan Mitchell, keep up what you're doing. I actually tweeted that at him. I said, I appreciate the attention his tweets get me, but I'm actually fully behind him for getting paid. That's what he should do. He didn't respond to that. We'll see if this saga goes anywhere else. But that was an interesting part of the week, Brian. I want to get into NBA offseason, and here's what happened. You were dealing with technical difficulties, but I think this is what happened. This broke the internet. I hope this is real and we're not falling for a scam, Brian. But did you catch the news about the Golden State Warriors?
Oh, did it drop in the past hour since we started?
It did.
Oh, tell me, I'm
this is
unspoiled.
I'm seeing blue check marks say this. DeMarcus Cousins is allegedly agreeing to a deal with the Warriors.
I hope it's veterans minimum.
Well, so we should give the following observation. When we're just bashing Donovan Mitchell, we said he's a shooting guard, which is the weakest position in the NBA. DeMarcus Cousins, at least the last 3 seasons, has been an above-average center, which we argue is the most important position in the NBA. And you've noted this. You've absolutely hated the fact that the Warriors have kind of fallen in love with the small ball mean. So having a traditional center like DeMarcus Cousins could be a very interesting thing. Now, I agree that the real fear here is his health. We said the same thing about Gordon Hayward, about Kyrie Irving, possibly even Kawhi. Players that miss an entire season or have a season-ending injury, we're always scared of it. That was I forget was it Achilles? It was something really bad that he went down with. Do you recall on DeMarcus Cousins?
No, I don't.
Okay, so dear God, Brian, screw you, Warriors. It is for a 1-year, $5.3 million contract.
Oh, the mid-level. Well, no, I mean, it's a good contract. It may not work out. Like, I'm going to be skeptical, but compared to everyone else anyway. But at that price, you have to roll the dice for him, I think.
We were making this point last week about Michael Porter Jr. For the Denver Nuggets. It's like there's no reason not to risk big. And then what I love about this to what we've been saying is if we essentially look at the 4 players in their prime that the Warriors have, that's Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Who am I dropping?
Andre Iguodala, Kevin Durant.
Dropped Kevin Durant. Oh, I'm so sorry, Kevin Durant. So
he was only a 10-win player last year.
Yeah, geez, we'll talk about that in a second. If you look at those 4 players, if you pair them with the traditional center, and I mean, back in the day, we were even saying Andrew Bogut, JaVale McGee, these players, they're not amazing players. They're just like good. That's what you should do. So last season, Kevin Durant left some money on the table for the Warriors, and they picked up Nick Young. This season, he left some money on the table for him. They picked up for nothing DeMarcus Cousins. That is amazing. I do think the sad part is we're going to have to deal with a whole nother year of the Warriors are bad for the NBA. I'm going to tease a piece I'm writing, Brian, which is it's actually like already written, already got the charts. I just have to release it, and it's one of those we're saving because it's the off season, and we're what's the word? How am I forgetting this word, Brian? It's a very common one, like preserving, whatever. You want to like make something last a while. This feels embarrassing.
Preserve sounds good.
Preserve, fine. We're preserving our content, but if you look at the NBA, the issue wasn't Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, destroying NBA parity. In fact, the league, according to a metric called the Null Scully, which says if you looked at what a perfect league would look like, this would be most teams between 30 and 50 wins. And what the league actually looked like, the NBA has never been a fair league. It's always been the most unfair. And we've said this is because there are like 10 superstars that can dictate everything. But the NBA in the last 2 seasons has been closest to the most fair it's been in a while. The issue is how the NBA seeds its players. As a note, if the NBA did 1 through 16, so 1 plays 16, 2 plays 13, et cetera, the Denver Nuggets would have played the Golden State Warriors in the first round last season. The Denver Nuggets didn't make the playoffs, and a worse team out East played. And then additionally, when we looked at the top of the NBA, despite the fact that the East actually had some good teams in terms of the top 20% last season, the best teams, the Rockets, the Warriors, the Jazz, were out west. The NBA is lopsided in that. So the real issue the NBA has isn't that it's unfair, because it's always been unfair. It's that they have this arbitrary distinction between East and West, and the East has just sucked for a while. I argue a big part of it, this happened in the 1990s, was James Dolan. Big markets, we just noticed this. So LeBron James going to Los Angeles is a huge deal. We're going to talk that a bunch more, of course. Well, LeBron James going to Los Angeles, big deal. Los Angeles, I saw people bashing Magic Johnson and ownership and whatever, and it is a testament to how bad of an owner Jim Buss was after Jerry Buss died. The Buss family had some major issues, and then Jeannie Buss kind of had a coup and took over and was like, no, we're done with this crap. Jim Buss was a horrible, horrible manager of that squad. Big markets just have an advantage. You don't need a great GM in a big market to attract players because it's a big market. That's a testament to how bad James Dolan is in New York. In 1999, that was the last time the New York Knicks made the finals. James Dolan took over, and they've just been terrible since. And so essentially, the biggest market out east has been destroyed. And then, of course, while they're turning things around, kind of, Philadelphia had the same issue. They were tanking intentionally, and then it looked like everything was getting better, and then we had Colangelo. So out east, their big markets, which would be Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, have just had really bad ownership or management. Out west, the big markets, Texas and California, have had better management, and that's a very real problem as long as the NBA wants to stick to this East versus West playoff structure. So next year, we're going to hear about how unfair it is with Golden State. The real issue, as one of my friends already noted this, between the Lakers, the Rockets, and the Warriors, one of those teams isn't making the conference finals, which is a big deal. And obviously,
I think there's going to be massive pressure, though, this offseason, Dre. After LeBron moves over, I think all the owners are going to be pressuring Silver to go to 1-16 next year.
So that's funny because on the one hand, yes, the good teams have an incentive to do that, but the bad teams, think about it. If you're a crappy team out east that has a chance of making the playoffs despite having a losing record,
Boston and Philadelphia are ecstatic right now too.
Well, out east, if you're, or Toronto, right? Toronto's like now a shot with LeBron gone. So it's like there are, for fans of this sport, it makes a lot of sense to do 1 versus 16. But the issue we've seen in the NBA is owners that have vested self-interests aren't going to agree, and a majority of owners in the NBA have no reason to agree to 1 versus 16. What I will say about, so let's see. I'm going to take a detour, and then we'll get back to free agency. I just want to give a shout-out to Daryl Morey for winning Executive of the Year. When I met him in person at Sloan, he said it wasn't going to happen, and then, of course, it did happen. So you were a liar, Daryl Morey. Although, as we've noted before, Brian, Daryl Morey seems to have a very San Francisco Giants, they're a baseball team, as I understand, streak, where they were for a while winning the title every other year. Daryl Morey seems to make great moves on, I guess, even years, and then make crappy moves on odd years. This offseason, we're already seeing Trevor Ariza didn't get re-signed. So we'll see if they make a Chris Paul-like move or if they make a Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson-like move. A fun one I saw Arturo throwing out there is just as a possibility, but I'd love to see is what if they go up to Cleveland and try and dump Ryan Anderson for Kevin Love? That'd be something.
Oh, God. Tough times in Cleveland. Yeah, so, well, do you want to get into the Dave Barry, Chris Paul article now then? Or
we'll zoom through this really quick. I got to laugh at Dave because obviously what Dave did is this is trying to time the right time to release pieces, something we're working on too. And Dave Barry, submitted his piece to Forbes Sunday night. That's like a good time to release a piece. And so essentially, here's what the piece said, and you're going to use some logic from it. Essentially, Chris Paul might not be worth the money because he re-signed with the Houston Rockets. Nikola Jokic is a great pickup, and I think the Brooklyn Nets also made a good pickup, but I forget who. That was Dave Barry's piece. Right after Dave's piece gets released, LeBron James announces he's going to Los Angeles. So I've been joking with Dave. But some of the logic behind this piece I'd love to use is this is the classic maneuver, and let's pull up your spreadsheet, Brian. The classic maneuver that Dave has used in like the overpaid, underpaid, which is you take the total bankroll of the NBA salary, you divide by the total number of wins, that's 1,230. You get, I think it was 2.something million, 2.3, I think around, right, Brian?
2.7.
2.7 million a win.
2.2, I'm sorry. It's 2.7 billion is the total, but then 2.2 million per win. Yep.
In the modern CBA, a win, if you were looking to construct a 41-win squad, you'd be looking at about 2.2 million a win. So what you did is you've just, so far, And you by the way, you can add DeMarcus Cousins to your spreadsheet, Brian, and I believe he's worth the money actually, according to this metric. You take how much they're going to get paid next season. You look at the wins they put up this season. You look at the wins they need next season, and then you look at the delta. And so essentially, let's just talk some fun names. If LeBron James played like he did this season, he's definitely worth the money. Same with Nikola Jokic, even though he signed a huge contract. Some players we should be scared of, though: Chris Paul, Paul George, Kevin Durant. We'll get to him in a second. And the really big, really scary one that you've talked about, Brian, is Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is atrocious right now. I just want to talk a little bit about the logic there, where what I've said is you probably want to look at, instead of a 41-win squad, because that would be an average squad that might even miss the playoffs out west, you might want to look at a 50-win squad. And so in that case, some of these guys might go down again. However, the offset is there are players that are going to be on rookie contracts, so you don't necessarily need that. And the last major point, we were talking Chris Paul, because I think you and I are in agreement on this, Brian. Chris Paul is still probably worth the money for a few reasons. One thing that Dave's formula does not include is playoff wins. Yeah. And I easily think that Chris Paul is probably worth another 4 or 5 playoff wins. He certainly was this season. In fact, Patrick has that. So let's get that up really quick. In case you don't know, you can go to Boxscore Geeks. At the very top, it says playoffs. I'll leave that page. And let's see. What did Chris Paul, despite being injured, produce? So Chris Paul, I fat-fingered at Brian, so missed him, was worth 2.4 wins in the playoffs, but don't forget he missed them. So it's like, yeah, he's worth another couple of wins. Additionally, the major part, what we were just saying, is you can't make a title run in the NBA without a top 10 player. At least we have not seen that happen in the last 30 years, essentially. The only major exception is 1999. What I basically call is like jumping without a parachute. Marcus Camby turned into the star player he would be for the rest of his career in the middle of the playoffs. We don't normally see that happen. You need a top 10 player to win in the NBA. And so if you have to overpay a little for a Chris Paul, that's fine, because you can't replace that. Whereas, for instance, Will Barton's probably worth the money, but let's say Will Barton had to walk. Let's say the Nuggets let Will Barton walk. You can find, for similar cost, a replacement value to Will Barton. In fact, that's one of our major complaints about the NBA, is that teams will not spend their money wisely on the role players. They'll luck into a LeBron James and a Dwayne Wade and a Kevin Love and a Kyrie Irving, and then instead of signing good players, they sign Jeff Green. So it's like you can find replacement level players in the 5 to 10 win range, but the 10 and above is really hard. And then additionally, what we'll kind of notice is that Kevin Durant and Chris Paul, another misleading part is they were injured for part of the season. So the essential point is it's the Shaq principle. If this player is going to give you 10 plus wins in the regular season and be healthy for the playoffs, we probably think they're worth the money, even if you spend more than the dollars per whatever amount, because there's a rare. It's the exact same Donovan Mitchell point. They are both rare, you can't get them, and valuable. So I think that's my point. We can start talking specific free agents if you would like.
Yeah, and just, for Chris Paul, the title of the article was, Chris Paul is really good, but he's not worth $160 million. And that's probably true. He'll be pretty old towards the end of that contract, but you're paying for those first couple years, right, where you're making those title runs. Having a legit shot at a title run is really tough. So if you're in a position where you can go for it, you have to be a little bit risky. So the real question, I think, and what I tried to address in the spreadsheet anyways, is he worth $35.6 million next year? And I think he has a really good chance of being worth it, especially, like you said, with those extra playoff wins. And yeah, this is the biggest weakness of this exercise. I generally look at per minute production more than total, but this is for total. So this is just kind of, more of a Moneyball exercise, I'd say. I'll reference a few of the players you were talking about. Yeah, same thing with Kevin Durant. He was hurt last year, so I'm not worried about him, producing 13 wins next year. He's produced 20 in his career multiple times, and he's in his prime, so he'll be fine. Aaron Gordon's a player I was really high on when he was younger. When his first and second year, he was great for a young player. I don't really know what's happened since then. He's been moved from small forward to power forward. That might have hurt him. He's not a very good rebounder or big man, for a power forward. The Magic just kind of aren't great, so maybe that's hurt his development. But on the other hand, if you're gonna try to move him back to small forward, he didn't never developed into a great 3-point shooter either. So yeah, Aaron Gordon's still young and still could be okay, but he did not follow that early career projection so far. So this is looking like one of the most overvalued contracts so far.
Well, what also gets funny to your point is it gets really hard to know players and how they're going to do on new teams. So I definitely feel we should be very cautious. Any number, like if we tried to come up with here are their wins last year in their new team, and LeBron James was with this many wins, and JaVale McGee and Rajon Rondo, that isn't how it works. In fact, I get very frustrated with a lot of people that are starting to come up with that, because what you really need to know, here is what you would have to do if you want to project next season. You would have to look at the team and ask, not usage, fuck usage, well, kind of usage though. You would have to ask how they are going to distribute the ball among those players. What are those players' responsibilities going to be, and what's that going to look like? Because, that there was a very obvious diminishing returns that we actually saw between Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Love. On paper, all three of those players, very great scorers. But if you looked at the total touches per game they all took, it didn't take hard math to go, there aren't enough touches for all three of those players, and Kevin Love did end up being the odd man out for a majority of his time in Cleveland. So we have no idea what a lot of these teams are going to look like. In the Aaron Gordon case, though, if he could be good on another squad, right? You mentioned he's been moved from power forward to small forward, and his production has changed. Who knows? Last season looks odd. I got to buy injury. Anytime I see a player below 2,000 minutes that has played above 2,000 minutes before and see a major degradation in performance, which he did, I usually point to injury. And understand, as an analytics person, this is one of the most frustrating things we have to deal with, which is we are not privy to injury. And this happened in the NBA Finals this last season with LeBron James. LeBron James, allegedly after the first game, punched a whiteboard and injured his right hand. And that might have explained why there was some drop-off in his scoring the remaining games in the finals. But what we heard is, the Cleveland Cavaliers were under no incentive to share what happened to LeBron James. Why would you tell the opponent, yeah, LeBron James can't shoot as well and his right hand is hurt? You've got to make them fall for it and believe that could happen. So the same is true, right? If the Orlando Magic are looking to trade Aaron Gordon or he's past their physicals, they're under no incentive to say, oh yeah, he was injured last season, that's why he's worse. So I think there's that. I got to give major props to who I think the rightful Sixth Man of the Year award winner should have been last year, Will Barton. Fantastic signing for the Nuggets. I got to go off on a brief tangent, Brian. You might have seen me doing this on Twitter. What the fuck were the Nuggets thinking? If you look over the Nuggets, they have over $60 million committed to Paul Millsap, Kenneth Faried, Daryl Arthur, and who is the fourth one? How am I dropping his name? It was or Mason Plumlee.
Yeah.
This squad kept paying money for power forwards, and I don't get it. Now, of course, the major one I hate is Paul Millsap. That was such a stupid signing. The way I phrased it is, in his prime, Paul Millsap might have been worth a max contract in kind of the Al Horford scenario. If you believe he is the last piece needed on a big market squad like Boston or Los Angeles to get to a title, then absolutely pay Paul Millsap a max contract back in the day. He is not worth a max contract on the Denver Nuggets in his 30s when his numbers have been going down. Just such a stupid signing. But, they signed Paul Millsap, and then right after signing Paul Millsap, they signed Mason Plumlee. And it's like, well, if you're going to sign Paul Millsap, why would you then pay another $14 million? So the Denver Nuggets, I think, have some great pieces between Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, and Nikola Jokic. That team looks amazing if they would actually give Faried minutes again, but that's never happening. I think he's played his last minute in Denver. But then this squad, after spending money really wisely, just wasted over half of their cap on power forwards, three of whom I think aren't worth it. Paul Millsap, if they're not going to play Faried, and Daryl Arthur is just such a horrible, horrible contract. This squad is just so frustrating. For a small market squad, when we're talking Moneyball, I'm glad they spent their money well on Jokic and Will Barton this offseason, but I'm just baffled by what they've done with the rest, and we've seen that a lot. DeAndre Jordan allegedly is going to Dallas, right? And you were saying,
one year, $24 million, and this is probably calculated because next year teams are supposed to have a lot of cash again. So that's going to be a much more player-friendly year than this year. So signing a one-year deal for a pretty, decent chunk of change, probably a good deal for Jordan, but it's even better for the Mavericks. One of the top win producers this year, and he only has to get to, 10.6 wins, again, under that 41-win scenario to make his money. So seems pretty good for Dallas.
And yeah, I mean, it is amusing, and I'm one thing I'm loving about DeMarcus Cousins to the Warriors, Brian, is we've just hated this belief that small ball is the new vogue, and you noted very astutely in the awards ceremony for Defensive Player of the Year, all of the players that were up for it were bigs. You know, you had Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis, and then the winner, Rudy Gobert. So I think it's not a bad thing to get a more traditional big in some better markets. I don't think DeAndre Jordan is really going to turn things around hugely in Dallas, but I'm going to remain.
I don't know, Dre. Like, I was thinking the opposite, that if you just look at the total impact in wins produced, like, Jordan is similar to LeBron in wins. Like, he just produces a ton of wins. Now, he's not going to bring the same, like, all these players with him, like the super team aspect. So in that sense, he's not going to be like the team leader or culture builder. But in terms of pure impact on the court, I think it's pretty big.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, even if he only was worth, let's see, I'm taking a look at the Mavericks last season and seeing who they might lose. So the one issue they kind of have, and we kind of saw this issue with Dwight Howard and Clint Capella in Houston. Two of their good players already last season, their two JJ Barea, wow. Okay, so their three tops wins producers were Dwight Powell, JJ Barea, and Salah Mejri. Those guys are both centers, Salah Mejri and Dwight Powell. So I think I don't know the situation. I don't remember if Dwight Powell resigned. I think they do have kind of too many of the same player. They've got Luka Doncic coming, who will probably be a nice power forward. This squad really needs a backcourt. That's becoming a really common theme.
Oh, see, I thought that Doncic was going to be a guard, but I don't know. We'll see. He's 6'8" or whatever.
It is beginning. I mean, I love it. I'm absolutely loving going back to the Magic Johnson way of doing things, where it's like, yeah, with Ben Simmons, you kind of go, yeah, why the hell does this guy is the body of a center? Why the hell does he need to be a center? And so, yeah, Luka Doncic, I guess, yeah, he might be more of a forward guard. So we'll definitely have to see what becomes. I kept hearing him compared to Dirk Nowitzki so much, but that could be interesting. So I think it'll be fun to see what the Dallas Mavericks do next season. That is a good move, and it kind of makes me sad because back in the day, he went back to the Clippers, and certainly that was seemingly a better move. Chris Paul, better market. But I would have loved to have seen him in Dallas back in the day. It is nice to see. I will, provided nothing goes wrong, I will give full credit for the Mavericks for being smart here, which is don't have the sour grapes. Don't be a bastard just because you missed out on a player one offseason. If they're still worth the money, sign them. I'm down for it. Let's see. There's just so much.
Paul George is one I want to hit, Trey. He's the last really big one. So I'll go first and let you really get into it. But this is one I think it's kind of slightly worse than Chris Paul. He's a much worse player. He was all right last year. I don't think he's going to come close to earning this contract. But that said, I'm not necessarily hating it completely because Oklahoma City has built this team that I think can actually compete with the top teams. So what is their core of 5 players looking like right now as stars? It's going to be Westbrook and Robertson in the backcourt, one of the best backcourts in the league. Assuming Robertson's healthy, that's a big if. And then you got Adams, Noel, and George as your front court. That's pretty good core of players.
Okay. So thank you, Brian. I'm glad there's so much going on. So first off, apologies if we miss any news stories. Right? If there hadn't been technical difficulties, we would have missed DeMarcus Cousins tonight. So you can thank technical difficulties for Brian, the Warriors fan, getting to. It's classic Brian, by the way, right? You get good news, and you have now the traditional Warriors fans is flipped. You used to be overly optimistic about stupid stuff in the offseason, and now you have good news, and you're like, I don't know. So I love it. All right, so this does line up really well. The top 4 they had last season, Steve Adams was worth 14 wins. Russell Westbrook was worth 14 wins. Paul George was worth 9.6 wins. Andre Robertson, now here's where it gets key, was worth 5 wins, but he got injured after only 1,000 minutes of play. Now, Carmelo Anthony, that's
the big problem. They have to find a way to stretch him or somehow get rid of him.
No, he's gone. But here's the key. This team last season, this gets really funny. Let me just verify this with Basketball Reference. So sorry for the tangent here. Last season, the Oklahoma City Thunder won 48 games. However, I believe if we look at what's more important, this is their point margin. They were actually a stronger squad than that. And I think they actually got, they really, to what we were just saying about the playoff seeding, the Oklahoma City Thunder. So if you go to Basketball Reference, by the way, at the bottom, they have miscellaneous stats. And so what you can look at miscellaneous stats is the actual win-loss and then also look at like projected win-loss. So the Oklahoma City Thunder were actually the 9th most in wins, right behind the Utah Jazz. So ironically, in 1 versus 16, they would have had the same matchup in the first round. So ironically, I'm like, man, they really got hurt by seeding, but the numbers actually say they played who they're supposed to. But they were on paper a 50-win squad, according to Pythagorean wins. They should have won 50 games. They only won 48, and then they lost Roberson for half the season. And Carmelo Anthony, according to our numbers, was worth -4 wins. So put that all together. Replace Carmelo Anthony with a decent power forward. They picked up Nerlens Noel. Give Roberson a full season. Adams and Westbrook are both still in their prime. And if Paul George can produce 5, that's the funny news. If he can produce 5 wins, because you could basically say Paul George plus Melo, this squad's a 55-win team. So I'm really amused by, what you're saying. Paul George possibly not being worth the money. I think you're right, but I also think this squad is a contender. You know, a 55-win squad with an MVP player is definitely a contender. And what I think is more telling about Paul George's move is I think he knows something's going on in Los Angeles. I think they're getting Kawhi. I think that's very obvious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think he basically did this first to kind of save face. But I think, recall, Magic Johnson at the start of this offseason said, if I don't attract a superstar in the next 2 seasons, I'll quit. And that's just that's the worst tell in poker. I think it was very obvious what was going to happen. So I think it was a foregone conclusion that LeBron James is going to the Lakers. I think Kawhi is pushing really hard. And I think that the ironic part, we kind of agreed with Patrick's point where it's like the right move for the Spurs to do is to just wait him out. But we'll have to see, because traditionally in the NBA, when a star has gotten really mad at their squad and demanded out, the star gets out. And I think the Spurs are basically, this is the classic argument. If Kawhi is willing to, spite the face to something, spite the nose to...
Yeah, cut off the nose to spite the face.
All right, I'm going to remember this stupid saying. It's very common. To cut off the nose to spite the face. If Kawhi says, you know what, I don't give a damn. I'm going to sit out all of next year. I'm going to leave money on the table. You are going to get nothing. If Kawhi is willing to go nuclear, that could actually make it so they have to do something. And right now they're asking for a ton. By the way, I do think it's amusing. When I'm seeing news reports like, can you believe the Spurs asked for 3 number 1 picks for Kawhi or whatever? That's not a draft pick is worth a future draft pick. So, Brian, I want to respond to something you said last week about Luka Doncic. Basically, you were noting the Mavericks gave up 2 first-round picks for Luka.
Yep.
One of those picks was in the future. I agree with your point that if they had 2 picks in the lottery this season, a number 5 and maybe a number 10, number 14, that it might be a wiser maneuver to say, hey, analytics squad, tell us 2 players you think are really good. We're just going to sign both of them, and hopefully one turns out. That's actually the strategy we think is the wisest. We think in the draft lottery, there is enough arbitrage. There are enough players that are ignored. There are enough good players that our numbers say were good college players, good international players, that you should gamble on as many of them as possible as opposed to only one. But the key is the Mavericks gave away a future first-round pick. And in my opinion is future first-round picks are worth nothing, especially if you think your squad's going to improve, because you can buy into the draft. So for that point, no number of future first-round picks is too much for Kawhi if he's healthy. So I've been getting amused by people saying, can you believe the Spurs are asking for the farm? But if Kawhi is willing to go nuclear and then eventually say, you know what, if you don't trade me to Los Angeles, I'm not going to sign with any team you trade me to, and I'm not going to suit up for you, that could be interesting. That could be very interesting. So I think either LeBron's camp believes Kawhi is going to Los Angeles, or they think it. And a lot of the moves we're seeing, Los Angeles is making these very ticky-tack moves. We actually love a lot of them. And
I think they're just having avalanche of great moves. I think it's significant. JaVale McGee for that price is great. Rondo for $9 million is great. Caldwell Pope even had a really good year last year.
Caldwell Pope was the best player on total wins. I mean, your numbers basically, I think it's roughly 17 million for Pope, for what Pope, McGee, and Ron and Lance Stevenson. I think
And
were 17.
Stevenson, who was good last year too.
Rondo's at 9. I mean, they basically spent 26 million on what I would argue is a very good bench. But that's kind of to me the giveaway, where I'm saying they basically spent ticky-tack money on a bench, and they've got LeBron James and a young core. I think they're going for one more star, and I think they know it's Kawhi. Like that just seems. I mean, it's worth noting for all the people saying it's not going to happen. People for years were saying LeBron to Los Angeles isn't happening, and we noted this too about like Kevin Durant to the Warriors. All of these things have been moving, even if they haven't been decided. They've been moving forever.
Yeah, it's got to be Lonzo Ball too, right? If they sign Rondo, they're saying, oh, it's going to be an open competition, but it seems like the handwriting's on the wall. But just going back to the the brinksmanship example, like should Kawhi threaten to sit out? It's interesting. So here's what I'm betting the calculus is. I'm betting that the Spurs are thinking some kind of mini runoff between Los Angeles, Boston, and Philadelphia is going to the return we can get from them now is better than whatever we'll get after a full season of Kawhi sitting out and people kind of forgetting how good he is. In fact, it'll kind of be like 2 seasons because he was hurt. So, and I think Kawhi has the same calculus. He's thinking, I'd rather play a year somewhere I don't like, maybe it's Boston or Philadelphia, than hurt my value by sitting out so long. That's what I'm thinking the calculus of both sides is here.
Yeah, but I think the very simple thing is if Los Angeles believes Kawhi is healthy and they're willing to just say, look, we like him this year, but we'll get him next year, and think that the Spurs are going to blink, I think that's fine. And I'm behind that.
Yeah.
Let's just talk the article I wrote this week. This is my belief for the motivation between LeBron James, one of the motivating factors from going to Los Angeles. He doesn't need a ton. But essentially what happened is I didn't think this was possible as recently as 3 seasons ago. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has scored a little over 38,000 points in his NBA career. And I thought that was one of the untouchable records that was remaining in basketball. I mean, even for what it's worth, even Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game is touchable, right? There may be a day where Steph Curry puts up 43s and 30 of them go in. I would love to see that.
Me too.
Obviously, a lot of the records that are like kind of untouchable are Wilt Chamberlain, most 50-point games in a row and all that. But I didn't think this record was touchable, but then LeBron James has stayed great. And essentially, he's at where if he can average 1,800 points a season for 4 years, he'll break the record. And he signed a 4-year contract with the Lakers. And then I also noted that the other players in front of him, Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, 3 of those guys, Kareem, Kobe, and Wilt, have their numbers retired in the Staples Center. So I think he's making a very calculated move there and saying, for my legacy, if I keep breaking the scoring totals, possibly ending number 1, and I do it in the Staples Center, titles doesn't matter. And I said this in the article too. At this point, you either buy LeBron James's postseason greatness or you don't. If you don't, I've got nothing for you. He is tied for second in terms of finals MVPs. He has been to the most consecutive finals in contemporary era. I mean, obviously, Bill Russell back on the day and the Celtics went to a ton, but that was with like an 8-13 team squad with a first-round bye. It is not the same. I think LeBron James can wisely say, look, making a finals is hard. The point I made, too, was like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant to the Warriors was supposed to be the undoing of everything, and it only took 1 year before they actually looked weak in the playoffs. And by the way, I fully applaud like DeMarcus Cousins for this. We always say this. No matter how good your team is, you should always be signing good future players. Always, always, always. Always be improving. It's not as cute as ABC, Alec Baldwin's speech in Glengarry Glen Ross, but ABI, always be improving. That's key. And I think like this last season, that was luck that he made it to the finals. That's a whole lot of luck. So I think he can wisely say, look, I can go to Houston or I can go to, Philadelphia. And I have a really good shot at making the finals, but there's no guarantee. And in Philadelphia, as I noted, he'd have to play more team ball. Obviously, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are going to demand the ball. But in the Lakers, he can score lots of points in the biggest market and possibly get his name in the rafter next to some of the big names in front of him. So that was my take, and I'm amazed that this is on the table. I did not think this was on the table a few years ago. Obviously, LeBron James has obliterated all the playoff records. He's the all-time leading scorer, stealer, minutes player. He's the only player in NBA history to have more than 10,000 minutes in the playoffs. He's done in the playoffs. Regular season records, he's still, and I noted, he worked very hard to keep his streak of 10-point games against Michael Jordan intact.
That's right.
He knows his all-time records and knows what he can add to the record books, and I know he's going for it. So I love this move to Los Angeles. I really think they're going to get another star. For all the internet stuff that's like dissing Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee, these numbers look good on paper, and they are getting a good 1-10 squad. So I'm excited to see what happens, but so far the Lakers look great. I do think, unfortunately, if DeMarcus Cousins is even 80% of what he was last season, the Warriors still remain the favorites. I can't believe your bar pick, Brian, of one more title was probably right. I didn't see that coming, to be fair. Because, I mean, basically, if DeMarcus Cousins can fill the JaVale McGee role but just play full minutes, that's all they need.
Yeah, my two favorite tweets about LeBron going to LA, I don't remember who tweeted them, so I'm sorry, subtweeting you guys on the air here, but the first was that LeBron signed a 4-year deal with the Lakers, and his son, LeBron Jr., known as Bronny, is going to start high school in Los Angeles, and that might have been a big factor for him going to LA. The one-and-done rule will be done, Dre, in 4 years, and LeBron and Bronny will be free to play with each other. I'm so excited for that. The last time I remember players of that magnitude was Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. played together on the Mariners for a little while, or was it the Reds? I can't remember. Anyway, that was great. So, yeah, I'm hoping for that to happen. And then, what was the other one? Oh, yeah, the other one was Lakers fans, if you're not allowed to root for LeBron until you admit that he's better than Kobe. Only then can you be allowed to root for him.
The thing I'd say about this is that, LeBron James is in the twilight of his career. Kobe played his entire career with the Lakers.
Yeah, that's true.
Including all of his prime. Kobe's going to have more than likely a better 4-year span than LeBron. Like, you're going to be able to look at some 4-year span of Kobe's. It's better than LeBron James's 4-year, I bet. But if LeBron upsets that, we can revisit. Other Julius Randle went to the Pelicans. This was kind of a rough one for the Lakers, and why I believe they've still got another star coming. Essentially, they had a cap hold on Julius Randle for essentially all of their cap, so they couldn't sign other players while they still had his rights. And allegedly, he didn't want to re-sign with them because he heard his role was going to be diminished. No surprise, given the names they signed. So he got signed to a 2-year, $18 million deal with the Pelicans. This works out well, I think, for all parties. I think the Warriors improved getting Cousins. The Pelicans improved getting Randle instead of Cousins. The Lakers improved getting LeBron and Rondo. So I think this is an odd win-win-win stage. We already commented on Nerlens Noel going to the Oklahoma City Thunder for nothing. We definitely like that. One other transaction that I had forgotten about, that I'm already forgetting about again because it happened last week.
Oh.
So let me get that really quick up in front of me. So in the previous 7 days, how am I dropping this?
Which team is it?
Oh yeah, the Los Angeles Clippers traded for Marcin Gortat and gave Austin Rivers. So the Wizards were a mediocre team. The East is just a garbage fire, Brian. The East is a garbage fire.
Yeah, and everyone said, well, this trade means the Clippers are definitely not re-signing Jordan, and sure enough, that happened, right? He went to the Mavericks, and now they have Gortat to be their center. I mean, it's a good deal in isolation for the Clippers. Gortat's old, but still pretty good, and they need a center. Austin Rivers is just not an NBA caliber player. So the Clippers probably aren't going to be as much of a factor next year, but this did slightly improve them, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely depressing to see what happened with the Clippers because they had a shot. They could have become the team in LA. Here's what I'll say is kind of the optimism, Brian. Were you a fan of the show Stranger Things on Netflix?
Haven't seen it.
So there's the upside down world where everything's messed up. And this universe has seemed pretty fucked up lately, especially with Trump and stuff. And what I'll say is you could maybe argue that when Chris Paul wasn't allowed to go to the Los Angeles Lakers, when the NBA vetoed that trade, maybe there was a schism in the universe where an alternate dimension where everything is wrong. And LeBron James going to the Lakers, that's what the universe is supposed to do. That's what we're used to. So maybe LeBron James going to the Lakers, that's a Donnie Darko. He's closing the wormhole. Maybe things will go back to normal. maybe that's what this is a signal of, and maybe we're going to get out of the upside down. That was a really long walk for a weak metaphor at best. If we missed anything, I apologize. That's a lot. As mentioned, we also had technical difficulties. So I'm going to let that be it for us, unless you have anything to say, Brian.
I should talk about Cousins a little bit. I'm just not going to dodge that completely. So one of the things I was going to say is that the Warriors were kind of running out of center options. Like, they lost JaVale McGee. I guess they decided for whatever reason, Pachulia's not coming back. We saw great options slip away. Like, I think the one you were talking about earlier today was Brooklyn managed to get Ed Davis for like $4.4 million. That's going to be one of the best free agent steals. So all these players are going away, and the Warriors were kind of at the end of, the musical chairs. Is David West not going to retire? We'll see. So Cousins was one of the few options left. And you know what this kind of reminds me of is LaMarcus Aldridge, right? Now, Aldridge signed a big contract, so there's going to be, if you're talking about the value, it's a lot different. But in terms of what type of player it is, it's very similar, right? Like a very skilled big man that is very respected for taking a lot of shots and scoring points. But we think, should be more of a defensive player and play more within a team role. And we were wondering, well, can Popovich work his magic and turn this skilled player Aldridge into an actual productive player? Kind of happened, kind of didn't. So will this Warriors style of play, where they can let him just block shots and pass and, work within the offense, can they actually find a way to let him not chuck up all these bad mid-range shots?
That's an argument we've heard for the Warriors, is that they get players better shots because they move the ball and stuff, and so that could be very interesting. All I'll say is for 5 minutes, that's nothing. That's less
very cheap, gamble. And Cousins, he has like personality questions about him. He seems pretty immature, but he loves to win. He really loves to win. So he might get in a fight or two with Draymond Green, but we'll see how that personality goes. But, of course it's a great move. But let's not forget, it'll be incredibly overrated by the media.
I hated all of the words out of your mouth there. The personality thing just always gets to me in sports, because even some of our favorites, players like Kobe, like Michael, even like Kareem, had personality issues. And that to me, it always irks me that those come up, because it's just arbitrary. I see people bashing Rondo and McGee's quirks, and it's like, well, don't forget, Kobe Bryant was being a jackass in his last couple of seasons with the Lakers, so who knows? The will to win, everybody in the NBA wants to win. All I can say is, based on the team's roster construction, I do not think that playing DeMarcus Cousins starters minutes is a bad thing with their current construction, and at that price, he's easily worth it. So it's like, I am a huge fan of what that squad can do. And in the future, Jordan Bell might be a huge asset as well. That squad's looking in a good spot for next year. A couple years down the line, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. If DeMarcus Cousins plays well, what are they going to do with him the season after? What are they going to? We've been talking about Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. Those two players are going to demand a raise. So that's a lot of stuff to be thinking about. But next season, this is an absolute amazing move. I will say we're just going to have to see what the Lakers and Rockets do, and then if anything happens out east. I will say the 76ers and Celtics are being pretty quiet, and staying in place while the West gets better is kind of a scary proposition.
Yeah, and so we've got this other player tracker here, CBS, which has all the players, not just the ones that are signed. And, you can look at who are the big names still out there. There's a few, right? There's Clint Capella still. The Rockets really have to try to keep him. Cousins was their number 6 free agent. He's gone. But other than that, a lot of these guys I don't consider to be very big impact. Like Marcus Smart, Isaiah Thomas. Tyreek Evans is pretty good, but now we're starting to, get down into the not really big deciders. So there's still some nice players to be had, but at this point, all the big names are pretty much found their homes.
Yeah, I think excluding Kawhi, all the major parts we were excited about. And this is the annoying stuff we were talking about the offseason. Like, you're going to go into the offseason with all this optimism, and then it's like done in 2 minutes, and then we're just going to be saying this. We're going to be a political talk show in a few weeks. So,
well, like everyone was saying a few weeks ago, free agency before the draft probably makes sense, right? Because it seems like all these decisions were already made. So why do we have to have tampering and all that bullshit? Let's just move free agency forward.
Yeah. So by the way, you're giving me the shout out I was going to do, because I didn't realize this.
Let's do shout outs.
Was this Daryl Morey that said this? where he basically said the big move would be to move free agency before the draft?
I can't remember where the proposal came from.
Because that's what I heard, and I wanted to give major props to it because that would solve so many things about who teams draft, and it could even help the draft in many regards because you could go for the best players instead of, I think what happens is teams use the draft as like, we're going to refill this spot, and in some ways they do it foolishly, right? You draft a point guard because your team needs a point guard, and then you give minutes to that point guard, and you kind of waste that spot. This is exactly what we're saying with Donovan Mitchell. The key point about Donovan Mitchell is you should not have a rookie point guard taking 20 shots a game. That is a bad strategy. And if he had done it well, then we would give him credit, but he didn't. So basically on all aspects, we're just saying this was a bad move on the Jazz's part. We full credit to Donovan Mitchell for doing it. Why wouldn't he? But the Jazz made a mistake. But if you move free agency first, then teams that go, we need a point guard, they sign a point guard, and then they draft the players, and then you get kind of more, this is what we've said, right? You should use veterans for players that you need, and you should use the draft as upside lottery picks that may turn great one day. And it's a very behavioral psychology thing. If you just switch the order, that you force people to do, how they think about things, it would be huge. A weird example is if you have people sign a loyalty pledge at the beginning of a test, right? Before you take a test, you have to sign something that says, I promise I won't cheat. Putting that on the front of the test versus putting it at the end, you finish the test, you sign and say, I promise I didn't cheat, changes how much people will cheat. So changing the order of operations you make NBA teams make decisions, I think in this case would make them make better decisions. I'm giving the shout out to Daryl Morey. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. I'll look it up before I do show notes or whatever. But I think that's a great suggestion. So that'll be my shout out, even though I stole it out of your hands. You had the ball and I just stole it and put it in the buckets, just like many great players steal rebounds. I'll let you give any shout outs you have, and that can be it.
No, mine is just the same as last week. We have finished off Summer Games Done Quick, the speed running marathon for charity, and let me get these numbers up here. They set another fundraising record this year, raising over $2.1 million for Doctors Without Borders. It was great. I was out of town for a little while, but I got to watch some of the runs. It was a lot of fun, and good job, Summer Games Done Quick.
All right. Well, that's been our show. If you've been us not through the website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. You can subscribe and upvote us on iTunes and Stitcher, the Boxscore Geek Show. All right. Hopefully the last change, we stuck to it for 1 week, Brian, but we will be going live, twitch.tv/Nerd Numbers on Monday evening, somewhere between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the recaps on channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. I've been your host, Trey Alvarez, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers. Co-host Brian Foster, you can find on Twitter as NBA Geek. And with us, as always, in spirit, Patrick Minton, you can find on Twitter as NBA Geek. I said NBA Geek for your name, Brian, but it is Boxscore Brian on Twitter. Apologies for that. That's been our show. If you didn't get the free agent you wanted, order a cookie.